It's funny how people show up in the moments that don't matter and then disappear in the moments that do. One minute, he was warm, charming, consistent even if imperfect, and then slowly the coldness set in. You could feel the chill not just in his tone, but in his energy. He wasn't texting the same. He wasn't showing up for the little things. You'd tell him something personal, and he'd nod, but the sparkle in his eye, the one that made you feel seen, it was gone. When someone starts to act cold, distant, or emotionally unavailable, it's easy to assume they've stopped caring, that they've lost interest, fallen out of love, or moved on to someone or something else. But in reality, that kind of coldness can often be a defense mechanism, one that's less about disinterest and more about fear. It's fear dressed up as indifference. Many people don't know how to sit with real emotional intimacy. They're drawn to it, yes, even captivated by it, but once they begin to feel vulnerable, once they begin to sense that someone truly sees them, the panic sets in. They fear being seen because being seen means being judged, being loved means being known, and being known means being at risk. For someone who hasn't done the internal work, that level of closeness can be terrifying. So what do? They retreat, they become colder, more distant, less consistent. Their messages get shorter. Their voice loses enthusiasm. They stop asking questions. They stop showing up emotionally, even if they're still physically present. And when that happens, we tend to personalize it. We think, what did I do? Or what changed? But the truth is, it's not always about something you did. It's about their inability to sustain a connection when it starts to feel emotionally real. For someone who's emotionally underdeveloped or simply not ready, emotional depth is like standing at the edge of a cliff. They want to fly, but they fear the fall. So instead of jumping with you, they take a step back. They begin to withhold affection, to dodge conversations that matter, to shut down when things get intense. It's not a reflection of your worth. It's a reflection of their fear. Coldness becomes their shield. It becomes their method of control. If they pull away first, they don't have to risk being left. If they stop engaging, they don't have to be accountable for the emotional needs of another person. If they act like they don't care, then maybe, just maybe, they won't feel the pain if things fall apart. This behavior is especially common in people who have unresolved emotional wounds, people who have been hurt in the past, who equate love with loss, or who have never seen a healthy version of intimacy modeled for them. They want connection, but they don't know how to maintain it once it goes deeper than surface level. So they freeze, they act unaffected, they start giving less and less of themselves, not because they're empty, but because they're afraid of what giving fully might mean. This kind of coldness isn't about manipulation in most cases. It's about self-preservation. It's a way to stay in control of their emotions by not letting them out in the first place. It's about keeping their heart locked away because unlocking it feels unsafe. You may have felt like the warmth in your relationship was slowly evaporating. You kept trying to reignite it through affection, through effort, through empathy, but nothing worked. That's because you can't force someone to feel safe if they don't even understand what emotional safety looks like. You can't warm someone who's committed to being cold as a form of protection. When someone acts cold, it often isn't a declaration that they don't care. It's a defense they've built over years of pain, disappointment, or fear of vulnerability. Their chill isn't a weapon, it's a wall. And sadly, it's a wall that often ends up costing them the very thing they secretly wanted most: real connection. Your value isn't determined by someone's inability to appreciate it. This is one of the hardest truths to internalize, especially when you've poured your heart into a connection that slowly slips through your fingers. When someone starts to pull away, acts like they don't care, or treats you as if you're disposable, it's natural to start questioning your own worth. You begin to wonder if you're not interesting enough, attractive enough, smart enough, fun enough. But those thoughts are illusions. They are distortions created in the vacuum left behind by emotional neglect. When someone fails to appreciate you, it doesn't mean you're lacking. It simply means they are blind to the beauty you offer, or they are too emotionally limited to handle it. Sometimes people don't value you because they're not in a place to receive real value. They're stuck in cycles of self-sabotage. They're drawn to drama, chaos, or emotional distance because that's all they've known. And when someone genuine, kind, or emotionally available enters their life, they don't know how to receive it. Instead of being grateful, they become dismissive. Instead of leaning in, they pull away. That reaction has nothing to do with how lovable you are and everything to do with how emotionally prepared or unprepared they are. The danger is when you begin to internalize their behavior as a reflection of your self-worth. You start to modify yourself. You shrink. You suppress your needs. You tiptoe around their moods, thinking if you can just be a little more agreeable, a little less emotional, a little more perfect, they'll finally see your worth. But that mindset traps you. It keeps you in a constant state of chasing approval from someone who isn't capable of giving it in the first place. You are trying to earn what should be naturally recognized. Real appreciation doesn't have to be begged for. It doesn't require you to mold yourself into something more palatable. The truth is, when someone can't see your value, it reveals their lack of vision, not your lack of worth. There are people who can only see the surface. They judge based on quick impressions, surface-level attraction, or temporary thrills. But your value isn't skin deep. It's in the way you love, the way you show up, the way you care even when it's inconvenient. It's in your emotional depth, your loyalty, your ability to listen, to empathize, to hold space for someone's vulnerability. If a person can't appreciate those things, that's not your failure. That's their loss. You could give your heart to someone on a silver platter, and if they've never learned how to cherish something real, they'll treat it like scrap. Not because the heart isn't valuable, but because they don't know what value looks like when it's in front of them. You must stop tying your self-esteem to how someone else treats you. That is the fastest way to erode your confidence and lose your center. Your worth is not dependent on external validation. It is built internally through self-awareness, self-respect, and boundaries. When someone overlooks you, that's your sign to step back, not step up your effort. You are not responsible for teaching someone how to value what is already rare. You are responsible for protecting that rarity until the right person sees it for what it is. Some people will misunderstand you, mishandle you, or minimize you, not because you're not enough, but because they are emotionally unavailable, distracted, or simply not on your level. When you internalize rejection as an indicator of your worth, you give power to someone who never deserved that level of influence over your identity. Walking away is sometimes the strongest form of self-love. There's a moment in every emotionally draining connection when you realize that staying is costing you too much. Your peace, your energy, your clarity, and sometimes even your sense of identity. You find yourself second, guessing your intuition, making excuses for poor treatment, and holding out hope for potential instead of honoring what's actually happening in front of you. It's not always dramatic. Often, it's a slow erosion. Little by little, you accept less than you deserve, hoping it will eventually lead to more. You tell yourself that maybe they're just going through something, that they'll come around, that if you're just patient enough, they'll recognize what you bring to the table. But as time passes, your emotional reserves start to run low. You begin to feel emotionally malnourished giving while receiving crumbs in return. That's the moment when self-love demands that you look at the situation not with fantasy, but with truth. The truth is, people treat you the way you allow them to. If someone continuously shows that they aren't willing to meet you halfway, and you continue to meet them at the end of the road, they'll take it as permission. Not necessarily out of malice, but because you've set a precedent. The precedent that your boundaries are bendable, that your standards are negotiable, and that your presence is guaranteed, no matter how poorly they show up. And while empathy is beautiful, it can become dangerous when it turns into a justification for self-abandonment. Walking away doesn't mean you stopped caring. It doesn't mean you gave up. It means you finally chose to stop abandoning yourself to keep someone else comfortable. It means you stopped giving your loyalty to someone who wasn't showing you consistency. It means you saw your own emotional depletion and decided to protect what little was left. Most people think strength is about fighting for something and enduring pain for the sake of love. But real strength is knowing when to stop fighting for someone who isn't fighting for you. It's about recognizing that peace is better than potential. That reality matters more than romanticized hope, that the love you offer is too sacred to be wasted on someone who doesn't treat it as a gift. When you walk away, especially from someone who doesn't believe you will, you're sending a powerful message, not just to them, but to yourself. You're saying, I am no longer available for this version of love. You're reclaiming your power, your time, and your emotional clarity. It hurts, of course. There's grief, there's confusion, there's the temptation to turn around when the silence sets in. But walking away is an act of faith that something better exists, faith that your heart deserves more than ambiguity, and faith that you will heal stronger than before. Many people delay walking away because they fear loneliness, but loneliness with boundaries is still healthier than connection built on disrespect. What you tolerate teaches others how to treat you. Walking away reteaches the world that your time, love, and energy are not free passes. They are earned through consistency, effort, and emotional maturity. You're not punishing anyone by leaving. You're protecting the version of yourself that knows what she brings, that knows what she deserves, and that refuses to keep watering a garden that only blooms when convenient for someone else. There's no closure more empowering than the moment you realize you don't need their apology, their change, or their permission to move on. You just need your own decision. You just need to choose yourself. His silence after losing you doesn't mean he's unaffected. It means he's overwhelmed. When someone loses a person who brought them emotional safety, depth, and genuine love, it doesn't just vanish from their world without impact. But instead of expressing that hurt, instead of reaching out or taking accountability, many people go quiet. They go inward, they pretend to be fine, they act detached, and to someone on the outside, that silence can feel like confirmation that they didn't care at all. But silence isn't always a reflection of indifference. It's often a reflection of emotional paralysis, especially for people who are emotionally immature or emotionally avoidant. Grief doesn't look like open tears or long messages begging for another chance. It looks like withdrawal. It looks like distraction. It looks like them burying themselves in work, in casual connections, in anything that keeps them from sitting in the discomfort of their own loss, losing someone who genuinely saw you, loved you, and stood by you even during your worst moments isn't something a person just walks away from unscathed. The silence that follows that kind of loss is usually a coping mechanism. They don't want to feel the weight of the regret. They don't want to face the fact that they sabotaged something real. And rather than admit that to themselves or to you, they create space. Not because they're thriving, but because they don't know what to do with the emotional chaos they've created. Deep down, they replay your last words. They remember the way you looked at them when you still believed in them. They remember the patience you gave when they were being difficult, the warmth you offered when they were cold. But instead of reaching out, they freeze. Because reaching out would require vulnerability, and vulnerability is the very thing they've spent their entire life avoiding. They might even convince themselves that staying silent is a form of strength, that it's better to suffer in silence than risk more pain by exposing themselves to rejection. They worry that if they admit they messed up, you'll reject them again, or worse, that you've already moved on, and they'll have to face the fact that they lost something irreplaceable. So instead, they wear a mask. Maybe they post pictures pretending life is amazing. Maybe they tell mutual friends they're doing great. But underneath it all is a mind and heart weighed down by the gravity of what they let go. The silence isn't peace, it's pressure. Pressure from unspoken words, from unprocessed emotions, from unresolved guilt in some cases. They stay quiet because they hope you'll reach out first. They think if they just hold out long enough, you'll come back, you'll fix it, you'll reopen the door they slammed shut. They might even convince themselves that if they ignore the problem, it will just disappear. But what they don't realize is that your silence now isn't revenge, it's healing. It's you creating space for your own peace after months or even years of emotional confusion. Their silence is a consequence of their emotional avoidance. Your silence is a choice born from growth. And while they're overwhelmed by the loss, by the absence, by the ghost of the connection they had with you, they remain stuck. Stuck in a place where acknowledging their emotions feels too risky, where reaching out feels too vulnerable, where admitting they care feels like weakness, so they suffer quietly, watching from afar, haunted by everything they couldn't say. And they'll probably never tell anyone how much it hurt to lose you, not because it didn't hurt, but because their ego and fear won't allow them to admit how deeply they feel it. Silence in their world becomes a false comfort zone, a place where they can pretend they're unaffected while internally battling the truth. It's a mask worn not out of strength, but out of fear, fear of accountability, fear of facing you, fear of realizing that the one person who always showed up is now the one person they can't reach anymore. You didn't lose him. He lost the version of you that loved without hesitation. In relationships, there's a version of ourselves that only appears when we feel safe, seen, and connected. It's the version that gives freely, loves deeply, forgives quickly, and hopes without restraint. That's the version he had access to, the one who showed up emotionally, who gave the benefit of the doubt, who believed in potential, who stayed a little longer than she should have, just in case he came around. That version of you wasn't naive. She was hopeful. She wasn't weak. She was strong enough to stay in love even when it hurt. But the truth is, even the strongest parts of us have limits. Love given freely is a beautiful thing, but love given without boundaries becomes costly when it's not reciprocated. Over time, the version of you who loved him so openly started to fade, not because you stopped caring, but because you were forced to confront the reality that you were the only one trying. You tried to be understanding, patient, supportive. You listened when he was distant. You reached out when he went silent, and you stayed when others would have walked away. But slowly, something inside you shifted. You realized that love without mutual effort becomes self-sacrifice. You started to see that you were being drained more than you were being nourished. The version of you that used to light up at his texts, that got excited about plans, that smiled when his name came up, started to disappear. Not because she was gone forever, but because she was no longer safe in that space. That joyful, giving, emotionally open version of you can only exist in places where love is respected, where effort is shared, and where emotional safety is prioritized. He didn't just lose a girlfriend, a partner, or someone who cared. He lost the softest, most generous part of your soul, the part that trusted him, even when he gave reasons not to. And the most tragic part is, he probably won't even realize what he had until much later, when he's sitting across from someone who doesn't ask how his day was, who doesn't see past the surface, who doesn't challenge him to grow. He'll feel the absence, even if he doesn't understand it right away. Because there's a difference between losing a person and losing your person. And that version of you, the one that still believed in his potential even when he gave you every reason not to, that version doesn't come around twice. What he lost wasn't just your presence. It was your energy, your softness, your belief in him. That kind of belief is rare. That kind of love is sacred. And when someone misuses it, takes it for granted, or fails to match it, it doesn't vanish, it just retreats. It protects itself, it steps back to preserve what's left. The tragedy is, people only realize the value of something when it's no longer accessible, when they can't feel it anymore, when they can't reach it, when they can't recreate it with someone else. That's when the weight of what they lost hits them. But by then, the version of you that used to answer at midnight, that used to stay up worrying, that used to fight to make it work, has evolved. She's learned, she's healed, she's redefined what she deserves. You may have grieved the connection, you may have cried, doubted, replayed memories in your head, but you also grew. You became someone who doesn't love with blinders on anymore. You became someone who knows that love should feel like partnership, not punishment. That your heart is not a test to pass, but a gift to protect. And what he lost wasn't just a person, it was a once, in a lifetime version of love he may never experience again, not because it doesn't exist, but because it no longer exists for him. In the end, this was never about revenge or proving a point. It was about remembering your worth when someone else forgot it. He acted cold, distant, and emotionally unavailable, mistaking your consistency for something he could always return to. But when you finally chose yourself, when you walked away not out of anger but out of self-respect, the loss hit him in silence. Not with words, but with the echo of your absence. You didn't lose him, he lost access to the rare, irreplaceable version of you who loved fully, patiently, and without hesitation. And while he may never admit it, losing you broke something in him that no distraction, no rebound, and no performance of happiness will ever truly heal. Because real love doesn't just disappear, it leaves a mark, and now your silence says what your words never had to. *, you were the one. He just realized it too late. *.